What is up, guys? So today I'm going to talk about something that's really scary, is what it's like when you lose your mind, when you're not in control, when your brain's not firing properly. It's a scary place, and there's times when I've been through it and I woke up the next day and thought, wow, that could have ended really badly, because I wasn't thinking right, a lack of sleep, that sort of thing, and I literally lost my mind. I lost my head, and it could have ended really badly. And it's a really scary place to be when you're not in control of your own self, of your own mind. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And it got triggered from a movie what I watched yesterday, which I'm going to get into it. But before I start, I just want to say the whole dark side videos, sometimes it gets mixed receptions. Some people like it, some people don't. But it's just a bit of banter. I'm just having a laugh at the way people act, the way people behave on the dark corner of YouTube. And there's a new channel, I don't know if it's a new channel, but I've recently stumbled across it. I believe it's called Clown World. So if you're into the dark side, go and check it out. It's hilarious. He's been uploading, like, some of our old friend Joy DP, some of his prison stories. And my God, when you get secondhand embarrassment watching someone, and I'm watching this guy, right? And the only time he shows any kind of passion or enthusiasm is when he's talking about being in prison and throwing shit on people or shoving drugs up his bum. And he's sat there delighted talking about it. His fucking gnashes are chattering a lot, and you can see he's well proud of, like, being in prison and shoving drugs up his bum and throwing poo on people. It's like, what is wrong? And I was getting, like, second-hand embarrassment watching it. And I just think, mate, he's got the brain of a child. But anyway, go and watch Clown World on YouTube. It's funny as hell. He's got this, he does, is it Jordan Peterson? He has him narrating it. It's really good. But anyway, when you lose control, you've already got inside of you what it takes to lose your mind. And if you don't sleep properly, like that's when it happened to me. It was when I was up for, like, I just got sacked from work. I just relapsed. My whole world was crumbling. So I went out. I had loads of money saved up, like tens of thousands of pounds. So I just went out and I thought, fuck it, I'm just going to buy a big load of crack and I'm just going to sit in my room and I'm just going to blaze. And that's what I did for like 3 days straight. No sleep, no food, nothing. Just sat smoking crack. Now, when you're not sleeping, I'm sure there's people watching this now that have been one night without sleep. And you'll be up all night. Maybe you've playing games, or I don't know, you've been out all night, and then you go to work the next day. You'll be tired. You'll not be your normal self. You'll be sluggish, and then you'll go to bed and you'll go to sleep, and then you'll be all right. But if you go 2 nights without any sleep, that's when it starts getting scary. Really scary, and you start seeing things that aren't there in the corner of your eye, and you start hearing things that aren't there. And I've spoke before about it when it happened with me. I thought there was a naked cult living in my back garden, and I was looking out the window and I could see them all moving around, but every time I tried to zone in on them, I couldn't quite zone in on them, but I could see them moving. And it ended up, I've gone running out with a hatchet, and I was ready to throw down, and there's nobody there, and there's a neighbours looking out. And it got to a point eventually where they said, look, you're losing it. You're going to get sectioned. Go to bed, get some sleep. And I went to bed. I was laid in bed, and there was like the Jeepers Creepers guy, with a hat and the cape, and he was floating outside my window. And I'm like, oh my God. And I wasn't scared, but I was like, smiled. I remember I smiled and I said, I can see you. And then I turned over, and I could still feel him there. And I turned back around and I said, yeah, you're still there, I can still see you. And I went to bed convinced that the next morning the whole house is going to be trashed, the garden's going to be a mess, and I'm proved right, and I can wake up and say, I told you all. But as soon as I woke up, I knew it was all an hallucination, and I started thinking, that's when it gets scary. I started thinking, what happens if a neighbour had come out and I'd have hit him thinking he was a naked cult member, or, and I was devastated. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. And that's one of the times when I've hallucinated. And yes, I have spoke about it before you get in the comments saying, yeah, you've spoke about it. But there was another time, which I've not really, I don't know if I spoke about it. I might have done You see, I've got early Alzheimer's because of copious amounts of Valium, so I forget what I've already spoken about. But there was another time when I was in a really bad place. You all know my story. I was suicidal. I didn't want to be here anymore. I'd made peace with dying. You know, I wanted to. And I'm not trying to garner sympathy. I'm not trying to, you know, that's what it is. I was in that place and I couldn't cope anymore. And I made peace with dying. And it's only because I got it wrong the second time. The first time, which I've spoke about before with when I drank the vodka too fast, I'm not going to rehash that. But the first time it was kind of a cry for help, but I was also deadly serious. And what I did was I took a full box of really strong amitriptyline, not the 30ml ones. These were the 100ml ones, and I took a full box. If I remember right, that there was 30 in each strip, and there's 2 strips in a box, so I took 60 amitriptyline, strong ones. And that night I was hallucinating, and the thing what reminded me of it was I was looking on YouTube yesterday for movies to watch on YouTube for free, because people upload movies on YouTube all the time now. They get took down, but you've got to watch them while they're up there. So I googled movies on YouTube for free, and I was going through them, saying, I'm not bothered about that. And then I saw one called Slingshot, and it was about an astronaut, and in the clips, you know, he was looking at his arm, and his arm was fucking going all crazy, and I thought, that might be good. Good sci-fi movie, and it had good actors in it. I can't remember his name, but he was a solid actor. I've seen him in loads of different things. And Lawrence Fishburne from The Matrix, you know, he plays the guy with the pills. So I thought, okay, this looks good. There's a good solid crew, good solid actors. I'm going to watch that one. So I went on, and it was free on YouTube. And I'm not recommending going watching it because it's not like a really good film or anything, but it really triggered me into when I was hallucinating from when I tried to take my own life. And what it is, it's about a guy who's in space. And they call it Slingshot because he's navigating through space, and they're going to hit a point where gravity slingshots them to the moon or whatever. I don't really know. I'm not that into space. But that's why it was called Slingshot. And the thing was, they had to put them into hypersleep or whatever it's called. You know, where they put you to sleep, and they'll sleep for like a week or something. And they use really strong drugs. So right at the beginning, you know, everything's going well, and the captain of the crew is telling this guy, saying, look, you have to make sure you don't lose your mind. You know, every time you go into that sleep, deep sleep, you're using really strong drugs to put you into it. So it might start messing with your mind. Plus you're out up here in space for years at a time. So you have to make sure you don't lose your mind. And it started off all right. And then he went into hypersleep, come back out, and then he starts hearing voices. And he went to investigate, you know, and it was little things like that, and he started thinking, there's something not right here. So he tells the captain, and the captain says, well, just make sure you keep a lid on it, you know, make sure you don't lose your mind. And then he goes back into hypersleep, comes back out, and then he starts seeing things. He starts seeing his wife, he starts seeing things like the ship exploding and hallucinating. And he's like, it's getting worse. And the captain's like, look, we're going to put you back into hypersleep. When you come back out, everything will be all right. So they put him back in. He's come back out, and now it's really bad. Now he thinks the crew are after him, you know. He thinks that they're plotting against him. And he starts losing his mind even more. And he ends up fighting with the captain. The captain's saying, look, you're losing your mind. Get a grip. And he's saying, no, you're against me. I know. You're tricking me. You're trying to, you know, and he doesn't know what's real and what's not. Just like I was like when I took those amitriptyline. And he ended up attacking the captain. He attacked his other crew member because there was 3 of them. And then he sat there with blood all over him. And he says to the computer, the main computer, he says, how many bodies are showing life on board? You know, because he wants to make sure they're dead. And he says, just 1. And then he says, okay, how many are showing dead? And he said, none. And he's like, eh? And then he's saying, how many crewmates are up here? And the computer says, 1, just you. And he's like, well, that can't be right. And so now he's thinking he's hallucinated his entire crew, you know, and all these fights he's been having. And then he starts hallucinating his wife, calling him, saying, look, you're not in space. This is a simulation. You've been put into hypersleep, and it's messing with your mind, you know. There's been an earthquake. You're stuck underground in a simulation. You're not in space. And then he's thinking, oh, man, I'm in a simulation. She's saying, yes, all you have to do is go to the door, open the door, and we'll come and get you. And he's just going to open the door, and then the crew member appears and says, don't do that. You know, you're hallucinating, you're losing your mind. If you open that door, you're going to be sucked into space. And he's like, fucking hell, what's real? You know, he doesn't know what's real. And I remember watching it, and I'm thinking, fucking hell, that's what it was like for me when I was hallucinating. And the crew member says, look, his captain says, don't open that door, you'll be sucked into space. And he's saying, no, you're a hallucination. This is a simulation. When he opens the door, and whoosh, gets sucked into space, and he's dead. Because it was all a hallucination, you know. But you have to figure out which parts were true, which parts weren't. And it's a bit of a mind fuck, you know. And it put me right back to when I was hallucinating, when I tried to take that overdose. And I took it, and I was like, I remember I had some crack with me. And I was sat with it. I wasn't smoking it because I was just that far gone. And I was sat talking to this guy, and he kept saying, oh yeah, you've got to get clean, you've got to get clean. And then I would click to, and I'm like, there's no one fucking there, is there? And then I would turn around, and there's no one there. I'm like, fucking hell, what are you doing? You're hallucinating. And then I would wake up in another room, sat in the corner, talking to somebody else, and they were saying, oh, it's time to get clean now, Paddy, you're too far gone. That's how fucked I was. Even my hallucinations were telling me, you're too far gone, you've got to get clean. And then I would come round and I'd be like, there's nobody there, is there? And I didn't know what was real. I would wake up again, I'd be downstairs, like on the kitchen counter talking to someone, and there's no one there. And it's so scary when you're not in control of your own mind. And again, when I went to sleep the next day, I woke up and I was okay. So it was all just in your mind. And I remember growing up, like, I love watching like serial killers and stuff like that, and psychopaths going crazy, and I used to watch stuff like that and think, and they would always say, oh, I was being chased by the devil, you know, they were out to get me, there were shadows chasing me. And I used to think that's a load of bollocks, because I've done a lot of acid in my time, and I've never hallucinated from acid. And I would hear people saying, oh, I got chased by trees, and Mars bar rappers were chasing me in the street, and I've had a lot of acid. I've never seen that. So I never really believed all these stories about people hallucinating and hearing voices to kill and things like that, until it happened to me. And I can tell you, when you're not in control of your own mind, it's a really scary place to be. I was close to getting sectioned. I actually wanted to get sectioned at one point. I actually went to the Doncaster Royal Infirmary, and this is how crap the support system is. I was on death's door, man. I was ready to die, and I presented myself. I said, look, man, I'm fixing to end myself here. I said, I can't cope. I can't keep going like this. Something bad's going to happen. I'm not going to make it. And the crisis team came out and said, oh, have you had any drugs in the last 24 hours? I said, well, yeah, I'm an addict. Of course I have. I need drugs to function. I need alcohol to function. Oh, well, there's nothing we can do. And they just sent me away. You know, and that was the support system I had. And that's when I lost all hope. I always had that in the back of my mind. Well, at least I can go and get sectioned. At least I can go to the hospital and get help there if it gets too bad. But now that was gone. Because they didn't want to know, they didn't want to do anything, they didn't care. And I know there's people in the comments saying, oh, well, you can't expect them to just drop the drop of a hat just because you're ready to get help. But that's exactly what I expect. That's what it used to be like growing up. If you had a problem, if you were struggling, you could go and get help and get sorted, but you can't now. Because there's that many people, there's that many, you know, they're that overloaded with work that people just get took to the side. I remember when I went into a group meeting, and I said, told everyone, I said, look, I'm going to execute my whole family. You know, I've been thinking about it, I've been dreaming about it, and I wasn't going to do it. I would never do it like that. But I wanted a reaction. I wanted someone to say, look, well, are you all right? You know, and give me a bit of time and give me a bit of help. But all they did was afterwards, they rang me on the phone and said, "Oh, do you need to talk to someone?" I said, "Yeah, I do. I need to fucking see someone. I need help." And they said, "All right, well, we'll put you forward to a team at a place around here. It's a hospital. It used to be a mental hospital." And I said, "All right, yeah, great." Nothing happened. No one ever rang me. I asked about it, and she didn't know about it. I was like, well, where's the support system? If somebody's struggling, how do they get help? And that's why you get people now. We get it in Donny all the time. People stood on the bridges ready to jump off, because that's what you have to do to get help around here. You have to do something, otherwise nobody's interested. But anyway, yeah, that's what I just thought I'd talk about that today. What it's like, and that's where I was in my life. I mean, you can see me now, totally different person, totally different life. I'm in a better direction now. I make videos on YouTube. I try and inspire people, but I also need to share my struggles as well to show people. You might think you're bad. You can't have been any worse than I was. And look where I am now. I'm popular on YouTube. I get recognized in the street. People want to shake my hand. People appreciate what I do. So yeah, it's never too late. You can't stop trying to move forward, because that's when it is too late, when you give up totally and stop fighting, stop moving forward. Better days are to come, because there's no one any worse than I was. But anyway, yeah, that's the video for today. If you like this video, press the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Yeah, got pop.